you want to hear a secret? Linux system administrators have been doing DevOps for decades. We just didn't call it that. Of course, the thing I'm talking about is shell scripting, and it's basically just doing commands that you would normally type on the command line and putting them inside like a program that will execute them all for you automatically. It's a way to automate things that you have to do over and over and over. And while it's not exactly the DevOps world that we're talking about now, conceptually it's the same sort of thing. Now, the first thing we have to understand is what exactly I mean when I say shell, because that's a question I got actually in one of the previous videos where I mentioned the shell that we're using. And so when I talk about a shell, it's the program that is running on top of the Linux kernel. So it's part of the operating system, and it basically allows us to have an interaction with the underlying Linux system. So when you're typing in a terminal window, you're using a program that is the shell. Okay, so for us, it's going to be the born again shell, or bash. You've probably heard somebody talk about bash scripting. And this is my grandpuppy who is going, anyway, the shell is this wrapped around thing around the kernel, and it allows us to interact with it. Now, you can write programs that the shell will interpret for you and do a bunch of commands. And that is what we're going to do. We're going to learn the basics of shell scripting so you can automate processes that you would normally have to type by hand every time. That's really what a shell script is. Now, before we get started actually writing a shell script, I have to show you two different editors. The first editor is VI, and VI is what I normally use. If you've seen me doing things on the command line, it's probably been with VI. Now, the problem with VI is it's really complicated to use. Like, you have to press I to go into insert mode, and then you can type, and then you have to press escape to get back into command mode, and then the command mode allows you to save, but to do that you have to do :W, and then that writes it to the file, but then if you want to get out, you have to do :Q, and that quits the program. VI is very powerful, and it's in every Linux system everywhere, basically. The problem is it's so difficult to use and get the hang of that I do not recommend you use VI unless it's something that you are already using and you're familiar with, or if you just want to like be super nerdy and you want to learn VI. I'll probably make videos about using VI, but in the short term, what I recommend is that you use a program called NANO. NANO is on almost every Linux operating system that you're going to use, and it's very user-friendly. So if we were to use NANO here, we would just say, instead of VI, we would say NANO, and then the name of the program we want to edit. And here it is. And the nice thing about this is arrow keys work just fine. So we go to the end, can just backspace and get rid of all this stuff. And you'll notice down here on the bottom, there's a bunch of commands. And what that means is if we want to exit, we can do Control and then the X key. And it'll say, do you want to save? We can say yes. What file name do you want to save it as? Well, the file name that it was, so press enter, and then it does it. So it's really, really easy to use NANO, and I recommend that you use NANO if you don't have something that you already have fallen in love with, okay? That said, I'm going to use VI only because I've been using it for decades, and that's just the way my fingers think. Okay, this isn't about text editors. So if I'm using VI, you can use NANO, and it's going to be just the same as far as the actual text files themselves. Just know that I'm using VI only because I've been using it for so long. All right, anyway, back to the command line. So let's edit this file again, and I called it test.sh. You don't have to end it with a .sh, but generally if you want to be able to identify a shell script, a lot of times we'll end it with sh, but again, we don't have to. But let's look at test.sh. Now, first of all, if you start with the hashtag or pound symbol, whatever you want to call that thing, that is how you put a comment in a shell script. So this is not interpreted by the shell itself. However, this is all a lie when it comes to the very first line of a text or a shell script. If we go pound exclamation, and then we give a path to what shell interpreter we want to use. So in our case, bin bash. What this is going to do as the first line in our shell script is tell Linux, if we execute this program, this test.sh, we want it to use bin bash to execute all the things that we're going to put in. we can tell it to do something different than what our default shell is. But if we don't specify up here, it will execute the commands we're going to type using whatever our default shell is. And that might not be bin bash. That could be something else like bin sh or bvsh or something. If we want to make sure that it runs how we expect it to run, we want to put this first line in. Shebang, which is the pound sign and then exclamation, and then the interpreter that we want to use. So always start your bash scripts with this. That's the short version of it. Now, what we can do is any command that we would put on the command line, we can type right into here. Okay, so we could say echo hello, and then we can save this file. And we really quickly want to make it executable, so we don't know how to do this yet, but chmod +x test.sh, and this is going to then make it an executable file. And then we can do ./test.sh and it will execute it. It says hello. Okay, so we've automated the process of that echo command. I know that seems silly. Let's add to it. Okay, so we know that echo works. What if we wanted to use a variable? If you remember, we used variables before. So we could say message equals hello there. Okay, now it does not have to be all caps. This is just, a lot of people will make their variables in all caps just so that we know it's a variable. So message equals hello there, and then we can say echo $message. All right, we'll save this. And now if we execute it, hello there. It used our variable as a way to store a value, and then we did something with the variable later on in the script. But when you're in a shell script, there are super cool variables that you can use too that don't really work unless you're in a shell script. And what I mean by that is you can actually give a shell script an argument, and then that argument will become a variable inside the shell script. It's super, super cool, and I'll show you what I mean. If we edit the file again, but we add $1, $1 is a way that we can send information into the shell script. So this means the first argument that we send to the shell script is going to be assigned to this variable. So it's going to say echo whatever that message is, and that's already assigned up here, and then whatever argument we give it on the command line. What do I mean by that? Let me show you. We'll save it. We'll execute test.sh, and the argument I'm going to give it is Sean. So now if we press enter, it's going to say, hello there, Sean. If we do test.sh, Bobby. Hello there, Bobby. What it's done is that first argument becomes $1. And we can do it with multiple too. So let's edit it really quick. And now let's add $2. Now you can see where I'm going with this, I'm sure. If we do test.sh, Sean Bobby. Hello there, Sean Bobby. Okay. What if we do this? I'm going to get fancy now. Are you ready? Sean Powers Bobby. Actually, we'll do Bobby. I think this was his spelling. Bobby Fisher. Now what I've done is I've given it 2 arguments and not 4 arguments, because since I put them in quotes, this is considered the first argument and this is considered the second argument. So what we should see is, hello there, Sean Powers, Bobby Fisher, because again, this whole thing is $1 and this whole thing is $2. So it's a really neat way to pass information into a shell script. And you can see how useful this would be. If you're trying to manipulate data, you can pass the data to the shell script and then it can use that data internally. But wait, there's more. If I clear the screen, let's edit the file one more time. Okay, I'm going to get rid of all this. We'll get rid of all the stuff that we did. And okay, and now what we're going to do is create a for loop. Now what a for loop is, if you're not a programmer, it will iterate through a list of information that we give it and assign the variable every iteration. Now, what do I mean? Okay, watch. We'll say for, let's say our variable is X, just the capital X, in, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is our set of data is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I'm going to say do, and now I'm going to have it do something with that. And I'm going to say echo capital X. Okay. And then I'm going to say done. So what we've done here is, what I've done here, I'm so funny. This is our set of data, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this can be more complicated, but this is a very simple explanation of a for loop, right? So this is our set of data, the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what it's going to do is it's going to assign this value to X and then do everything between do and done. And then it's going to go again, and it's going to assign X the number 2, and it's going to do everything in here. So what we should see is on the command line, when we execute it, it should say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because it's going to go through 5 different times, assigning the variable X to every value that we've iterated here. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense what we're going to do. Let's see if that works as we expect. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll be honest, I usually forget the exact syntax for how to do a for loop in a bash script. So if you have to Google for loop bash example every time you set it up, that's fine. I actually had to do that when I was preparing for this video because I forgot, like, okay, is it like do, does it go on the same line? Is it do and done, or how exactly does that work? So if you have to Google it, that's fine. But for loops are very, very powerful, and you use them a lot when you're doing shell scripting, okay? Now, there's one more really odd thing that was included. You know, we're actually doing these Linux Essentials objectives, and for some reason they put into the objectives for this video exit status. And what an exit status is, if you have a command and it has an error, it will give an exit status of anything other than 0. If the command executes without any error, the exit status is 0. So it's that easy. It's a way later on when you're doing more advanced scripting, you can use the results in a conditional, like if it exited fine, do this. If there was an error, do that, okay? But right now, they just want you to understand what an exit code is. So I'll show you, because it assigns it to a variable on the command line. We can use this in a script, but right now I just want to show you what an exit status is, or exit code, or exit status, because it's just apparently really important for you to know. So if we do something like type ls, it's going to show us the stuff in there, right? And then if we echo $? It should give us a 0. Let's see. Yes, 0. Because what happens when you execute a command of any sort on the command line here, when it completes, if it did so without error, it will assign this variable, $? or just the variable question mark denoted by a $. So this is the exit status of the previous command. In our case, since ls was executed without error, it is 0. But if there's an error, like if we were to say ls blah, 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 it's going to say there is no such file or directory. And now if we do an echo of this exit status, it's going to give us something non-0. Now, it's not always going to be 127, but it's going to be something non-0. And I'll be honest, I kind of want to keep going with bash scripting and show you all the really cool things you can do, like conditionals and while loops and all sorts of, like, until loops, all those things. But for the purpose of Linux Essentials, just a very basic understanding of how a shell script works is important. If you want me to do further videos outside of our series here, let me know, because I will happily do more shell scripting. But until we get to that point, I want you to remember to learn everything, do what you love, and most importantly, be kind. I'll see you with the next video, and yeah, let me know if you want other scripting stuff. I'll see you later.